When most movies or television shows portray Christians, they are seen as narrow-minded, bigoted, not very bright, certainly not very sophisticated, and driven by their ideology more than they are driven by a love for God and a love for people. Now, this is an unfair caricature in one instance. There are some wonderful people around the world who love God and who love people and who are beautiful examples of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. But there are enough people who claim to be followers of Jesus who are hate-filled, obnoxious jerks that the caricature stands up. Do you agree? And yet, Jesus taught something so dramatically different. How did we get things so screwed up? Look at one of the teachings Jesus gave. It's probably the most famous words he uttered. In Luke chapter 6, verse 31, Jesus said this, "Do to others as you would have them do to you." This is profound wisdom to live by. The golden rule. The highest hope we could ever aspire to would be to live our lives in such a way that we would really do unto others as we would hope they would do unto us. Can you imagine what life like that would be like? Where someone is putting you up on a pedestal, because that's what you would love, is for people to honor you and love you and respect you and listen to you, where people were doing that to you, but you didn't even care about that because you were so busy doing it for other people, and it was just this beautiful picture of life in the kingdom. Now, the golden rule is a very famous statement of Jesus, but I want to be fair, and I want you to know it's not peculiar to Christianity. In other words, there are different ways it is said in almost every world religion and in most philosophy. We see it, not said in the same positive way Jesus said it, but we see it in many, many places. For example, Confucianism. In Confucianism, the Analects of Confucius, we find this dialogue, and this happened 300 years before Jesus, at least 300 years before Jesus. Zhu Kung asked, "Is there a single word which can serve as the guiding principle for conduct throughout one's life?" And Confucius replied, "Yes, it is the word consideration. Do not impose on others what you do not desire others to impose upon you." You hear it's the same thing, it's just said in a negative way. Don't impose on someone else something that you would not want to have imposed on you. Ancient Greek philosophy contains a number of expressions of the golden rule. I'll reference two examples for you. The Greek philosopher Thales said this, "Never do ourselves what we blame in others." Never do ourselves what we blame in others. Again, that is a negative statement, but this is pre-Christ. This is pre-Jesus. Epictetus, who was born a slave but became a philosopher in the school of Stoicism, said this, "What you avoid suffering, do not attempt to make others suffer. You avoid slavery, take care that others are not your slaves." So I just want you to understand that this was not a peculiar thought to Christianity, but what Jesus did is he took what had been stated for centuries in a negative way and he flipped it. And as far as we know, he's the first one that said it like this: do positively unto other people what you want and hope positively they would do for you. You don't even think about it coming back to you. You just do unto others as you would hope they would do to you. The golden rule. The Bible lets us know people are important and we should care about them, and how we treat them is a very big deal. Romans 12:15 says this, "Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn." Do you want to boil it down to the essentials? Do you want to find out what the key to this whole Christian faith is? Galatians 5:14 says this, "The entire law is fulfilled in keeping this one command." This is the one thing that Paul says is the most important thing for you to keep. Galatians 5:14, love your neighbor as yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If someone took the message of the Bible seriously, they would not be a jerk. They would not be obnoxious. They actually would be seen as loving and understanding and compassionate people. A few weeks ago, we introduced the topic of emotional intelligence. I have loved these last weeks as we have discussed what that is. Social scientists over the last 20 years have realized emotional intelligence is actually a far greater predictor of success than your IQ. There are a lot of people who have super high IQs, but they don't know how to get along with people. They don't know how to understand their own emotions. They don't know how to manage their own lives. They are emotionally not intelligent at all, even though they have a high IQ. We talked about the 4 skills of emotional intelligence. Today will be the third one. We've talked about self-awareness. We talked about last week self-management. Today we're going to talk about others' awareness, and next week we're going to talk about relationship management. 2 weeks ago, when we introduced the subject and we talked about our self-awareness, we said that means learning to recognize, feel, and process your emotions, to kind of know what's going on inside of you. That's important for emotional intelligence. Last week, we talked about self-management. In other words, it's good to be aware of what's going on inside of you, but it can't just end there. You've got to learn how to manage what is going on inside of you, because if you don't manage what is going on inside of you, you will shoot yourself in the foot all the time, and you never will be able to get ahead. You never will be able to have success because you're constantly derailing. You're constantly in the ditch. And so we say it's important for you not only to know your emotions, know what makes up who you are, know your strengths and weaknesses, but then to be able to manage them. We said self-management, the definition is this: it's concerned with how you control and manage yourself, your emotions, your inner resources, your abilities. It also includes the ability to manage your impulses. We talked about that. One of the keys to self-management is keeping your emotions under control. And we acknowledge the fact that some people have a real difficulty, and there are some people that need to go see a doctor. They need to see a psychologist because depression or anxiety has reached a level that they cannot manage, and they have tried. They've done all the things that they can do, and they just can't. And we've said, listen, no guilt. See a doctor and perhaps medicine as a gift from God, not something in competition with God. If you need glasses, for heaven's sake, go to an optometrist and let them give you glasses. If you need to take blood pressure medicine, take blood pressure medicine. That's not competition with God. And if you need something to help you with depression or anxiety, for goodness sake, see it as a gift from God, not competition with Him. Then we talked about how most of the time we handle things well, but we talked about something that pops up from time to time where we just blow a gasket. Do you remember what we call that? The amygdala hijack. Anybody else remember that besides my wife? We talk about it all the time. Was that an amygdala hijack I just saw? The amygdala hijack. That occurs when people exhibit an emotional response that is immediate, overwhelming, and out of measure with the actual stimulus. And you remember what we said an amygdala hijack was? An adult temper tantrum. How many of you will honestly say, in my life, I have had a few adult temper tantrums? Yeah, okay. Y'all have. A few liars in the house, but most everybody was very truthful, very truthful. So, that's just introduction. Today, we're going to talk about the next skill one must possess to be emotionally intelligent. This is one of my favorites, and it's social awareness. And I'll be frank with you, some people are good at this, and some people are clueless. Clueless. And for those who maybe are clueless, you won't even know you're clueless. Elbow them. If they're sitting next to you and they're clueless on the social awareness, give them an elbow. Listen today and see if you can't learn some of the things we're going to talk about. Social awareness is the ability to accurately pick up on emotions of other people and to read situations. It's about sensing what other people are feeling and being able to take their perspective using your capacity for empathy. Now, some people are wired to do this better than others. They're called empaths. Have you ever heard that term, empaths? Empaths just have a sense about them. Nothing gets by an empath. They just measure and sense people's take all the time. And so they definitely have a better handle on this than the rest of us. But all of us need to learn to show empathy and to live out empathy. If you want a definition of empathy, it's this: the action of understanding, of being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experiences of another. The importance of empathy was explained in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. His fifth habit, if you want to go back and review that book, his fifth habit was we need to seek first to understand, then be understood. Isn't that a brilliant way to say it? Seek first to understand before you worry about being understood. What is our nature? Listen to me. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm the smartest one in the room. Pay attention. Instead of saying, let me hear what you're saying. I want to understand what you're saying. And then as we understand and I understand that, then I'll try to explain to you what I'm trying to say. Well, there are 3 kinds of empathy. And this first is going to sound a little therapeutic. We're going to get into some practical things in just a moment. But I want to give you 3 kinds of empathy. The first kind is just a natural curiosity that we have about other people's realities. This is called cognitive empathy. For those who like to take notes, cognitive empathy, the ability to see the world through others' eyes. It's saying things like, I like to understand how people see the world. It's always different for each person. I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by the way people think about things. I'm fascinated about what's important to other people, how they put their world together. That just kind of turns me on intellectually. I like learning about those things. Cognitive empathy is mind to mind, giving a mental sense of how another person's thinking works. It is one of the kinds of empathy. Each has a premium importance in developing relationships. The way of tuning in to another person does more than just give us an understanding of their view. If we really tune in on a cognitive level, we will know the words that we should use to help communicate better. We will know things that we shouldn't say because it'll take people down a path that we don't intend to take them down. It really will help us in relationships. A second kind of empathy is emotional empathy. We feel what the other person does in an instantaneous body-to-body connection. Well, have you ever been with somebody and you say, God, we have such chemistry? We just have chemistry. Can I tell you what's happening? Emotional empathy. You just feel, when they talk, your eyes water up. When their eyes water up, your eyes water up because you just feel in a moment what they're talking about. You just feel a connection. There's something beautiful about that. We have it with our children. We have it with our parents sometimes. We want to have it with our parents. We want to have it with people that we really love. It's an important thing. This empathy depends on a different muscle of attention. Tuning into another person's feelings requires that we pick up their facial, vocal, and stream of other nonverbal signs of how they feel, and we do it instant to instant. It's not something that we do the first part of the day and then we don't do it. No, we always just have a way of feeling that with them. This kind of empathy, research shows, depends on a tuning into our own body emotional systems. We actually mirror what the other person is feeling. We have a mirroring response to the person. That's how wonderful it is. It's just a beautiful thing. Daniel Siegel, a UCLA psychiatrist, calls the brain areas that create this resonance the we circuitry. I love the way that was. I just love the way that was presented, the we circuitry. Being in the bubble of a we with another person, that signifies the chemistry that I was talking about. That sense of rapport, that we just get along well together. We just know each other. The third kind of empathy is empathetic concern, and that springs into action whenever someone expresses their caring about another person. Empathetic concern, which springs into action. This kind of empathy comes from the brain's circuitry for parental love. It's just something that says, I want to help that person. It's a heart-to-heart connection, but it's not out of place at work. Even though it seems familial, it's not out of place at work. You see it when a leader lets people know that they're going to support them. They can be trusted. that they are free to take risk because that leader loves them and wants to see the very best for them. In the classroom, you see this concern when a teacher creates an atmosphere where students, have you had that teacher where students just flourish under them because that teacher has just let them know that they can be trusted? And we're gonna open doors for you to explore and to experience the very best things in this life. Well, the million-dollar question is, which kind of empathy should a leader, teacher, or a parent have? And the truth is, we should have all three. All three are what we want. Let me try to put it down where everybody can get this, all right? Have you heard of Brene Brown? Has everybody heard of Brene Brown? If you can see any of her TED Talks, she is fantastic. Brene Brown is an American scholar, author, public speaker who's currently a research professor at the University of Houston Graduate College of Social Work. In her 2008 book called I Thought It Was Me, But It Isn't, she references a nursing scholar by the name of Teresa Wiseman who gave 4 attributes for empathy. So you want to be empathetic, right? We all want to be empathetic people. Let's look at these attributes and see how they relate to us. The first attribute is this: to be able to see the world as others see it. This requires you putting your own stuff aside so you can see a situation through someone else's eyes. Let me tell you a story, and this goes back 30 years, but I still feel it as if it were yesterday. I have an African-American friend named Brandy. He is a musician, he is a thought leader, he is a counselor, he is a wonderful, wonderful man. So 30 years ago, I'm a young guy, 30 years ago, 25 years old. We were having lunch, and he began opening up to me about some of the pain he had experienced as an African-American man. 30 years ago, I'm 25. Cut me some slack because I was 25 and I was foolish. I remember the day so well because in retrospect, I was so out of the moment. For some reason, I shut him out in my mind. I wasn't listening anymore. Everything that he said, I told him that was wrong. I told him what the truth was as I understood it. In my great experience, having been an African-American man for absolutely no period of time, I had never experienced that, but for some reason I'm telling him what I know about being an African-American man. And my memory is of that day, the more I talked, the more discouraged Brandy became until our conversation was dismissed and we ended our lunch. I left that lunch knowing I had done something very wrong, but I didn't know how to name it. And it took me about 15 years before I really understood what I'd done. I see others do that all the time. In the race discussion, or the discussion about U.S. foreign policy when someone outside of our country has an opinion about what our actions, how our actions impact them. We want to tell them how they're supposed to feel because we have great experience in being that nationality, living in that country, right? But we're doing the same exact thing. Or discussion about poverty and the poor. How many times do I hear people that are so sure about what they know about poverty and they have never wanted for anything in this world? But they won't listen. They won't listen. I hope you'll get this. All of us see through our own individual lenses this world. All of us. And those of us that grew up with lighter complexioned skin, we have a lens. That's just the way it is. And our lens is primarily taught, for most of us, it was taught in school. It's kind of how we were brought up, socialized, is what we see. And we think that that's the only way the world can be seen is through our lens. Same thing, African American, you have a lens. We all have a lens. We all have lens. If rich have different lens than the poor. Everybody has a lens. But what I'm talking about is the ability to, sometimes we say we've got to put our lens down and pick up the other person's lens. I don't think you can do that. I think what you have to do is you have to realize you are seeing everything through your own lens. Do your very best to try to understand what someone else is seeing through their lens. Don't deny it. We have a lens. Know that you have a lens. Just be willing to try to understand how someone else can see things a little bit differently. Brenda and I have long moved past that day, but it has never left me. Because I knew in that day and in that moment, I was not treating Brandy the way I would want to be treated. And I knew, even though I couldn't nail it on what it was, I knew I was not living out the golden rule. And if I'm a follower of Jesus, it's not about putting your name on a church roll. It is about living out the teachings of Jesus. And in that day, in that restaurant, I didn't give a rip about what he thought. I just wanted to say my piece. But Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. What else does Teresa Wiseman say? She said another attribute of empathy is to be non-judgmental. Judgment of another person's situation discounts the experiences and is an attempt to protect ourselves from the pain of a situation. If I can discount you, if I can say, well, that's not true, then I can just move on to something else. But if I am non-judgmental and someone says something and I try to treat them with the same respect I would hope they would treat me with, I can't be judgmental. I'll give you an example. The poor, the real poor in our society. I didn't know much about that. I grew up very middle class. I don't apologize for that. I was very fortunate. I was blessed. I had two good parents, and I was born during a time when we had a house in the suburbs, all that kind of stuff. But I would think that somehow, if I would hear someone from a poor background, they just didn't know how to work hard enough. Y'all have heard those kind of things. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, but I would process it like that. Then a few years ago, I read a book called Hand to Mouth, Living in Bootstrap America by Linda Tirado. You want to read a book, if you struggle at all with the poor and with understanding what it's like to live poor in America, can I suggest you read that book? Because it changes things. Suddenly I listened without judgment to what the poor and those who advocate for them were saying. I did not think I had all the answers. I didn't think because I was 50 years old, I knew everything about poverty in the United States. I knew nothing about poverty in the United States. And it took my judgmentalism away. You see, sometimes we're not judgmental about someone's sin, but we're judgmental about stages of life and people, if they don't drive in cars the way we would want to drive them or live in houses the way we want to live, we don't think about it. So what's Teresa Wiseman say? Her 4 attributes: to be able to see the world as others see it, to be non-judgmental, and then she said this: to understand another person's feelings. Now again, we're talking about empathy as an important part of our lives. We have to be in touch with our own feelings in order to understand someone else's feelings. This requires putting our own stuff, after we know our feelings, you need to kind of put it aside to be able to focus on someone else. This past week, I was at lunch with 3 of the smartest people that I know. 2 are PhDs, the other one has 2 master's degrees and is a genius. So I'm sitting with these 3 guys. I'm by far the weakest intellectually at the table, but we're sitting there, and one of the gentlemen said, can I ask you guys advice? What are you saying when you're asked about the statues issue, Confederate statues? And there was a silence at the table as people were trying to formulate what their answer would be. I'd thought about this for a long time. I thought about it back when the Confederate flag, when that was an issue. Can I just tell you, now this is from someone who wants to practice the golden rule. This is someone who wants to take seriously the message of Jesus. You don't have to take seriously the message of Jesus. You don't have to. But I care about what someone else thinks. So this is what I said. My love for my black brothers and sisters far exceeds any love I might have for a statue dedicated to men who fought against the United States to keep my black brothers and sisters enslaved. Can I say that again because I want you to hear what I said? My love for my black brothers and sisters far exceeds any love I might have for a statue. I have no love for a statue. The Bible talked about building images, graven images, and thinking that that's something. My love for my black brothers and sisters far exceeds any love I might have for a statue dedicated to men who fought against the United States. They were not heroes. They fought against the United States, and they fought to enslave or continue to enslave my black brothers and sisters. It's not an issue for me. It's not an issue for me. So that's trying to understand another person's feelings. I have been to Germany a dozen times. It is a beautiful place. I urge you to go. But you will not see statues to Hitler, Heimlich Himmler, Joseph Goebbels, Hermann Göring, and the notorious Dr. Joseph Mengele. They do not exist in Germany except in museums where they are studied, but they are not out as a place where people celebrate something that was heinous. I want to be a follower of Jesus. That's why I say what I say. Nursing scholar Teresa Weissman's fourth attribute is this: to communicate your understanding of that person's feeling. That is an attribute of empathy, to be able to communicate what the other person is feeling. This is what I try to say when I'm listening to someone. I try to say back to them what they're saying. It sounds like you're in a really hard place right now. It sounds like you're really in a hard place right now. Tell me more about it. Or it sounds like you've experienced a great deal of pain. Tell me more about it. Or it sounds like you have really felt the struggle of poverty profoundly. Tell me more about it. Well, another question people have is, Ray, what's the difference in sympathy and empathy? Because those words sound a lot alike, and sometimes we get confused. What's the difference in empathy and sympathy? Sympathy is a feeling of pity or a feeling of sorrow for someone's misfortune. But remember, empathy is the action of understanding, of trying to actually experience the feelings, thoughts, and experiences of another. It's not just feeling sorry for someone, it is entering the relationship with them and feeling what they are feeling. Let me say it like this: empathy fuels connection, sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy fuels connection, but sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy is feeling with people. To me, I always think of empathy like this. Someone falls into a hole. They're way down in the hole. Somebody sympathetic stands up and says, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you're down in the hole. Can I throw you a sandwich or something? Can that be helpful?" Empathy climbs down into the hole. And empathy says, I don't know exactly what you're going through, but I've been in the hole. And I want you to feel a little bit of what you're feeling. And I want you to know I'm here with you. I'm here with you. That is empathy, very important. Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows the feeling that you're feeling. I have to find something similar that I can connect with. I don't have to talk about it. I just have to find that so I can empathize with you. Let me give you some wisdom. Rarely, if ever, does an empathetic, I'm saying that word wrong, response begin with "at least." So funny, Jane and I were talking this morning, and I began a sentence to her with, "Well, at least," and I thought, you dum-dum, you're preaching on this in just a few minutes, and you're breaking the rule right out of the gate. When I say "at least," I mean, I hear it all the time. We try to put silver linings around someone's pain. So someone will tell us something in pain. "Ray, I had a miscarriage." And a person trying to put a silver lining around it will say, "Well, at least you know you can get pregnant." Well, no, that didn't help at all. That was not a wise thing to say. Or someone will say, "I think my marriage is falling apart." And someone not wise will say, "Well, at least you have a marriage." That's not helpful. Someone will say, "You know, my son, John, is getting kicked out of school." And someone not wise will say, "Well, at least Sarah is an A student." That doesn't help me. One of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better But if someone shares something with us that's very difficult, here's what we need to say. I don't even know what to say right now, but I'm so glad you told me. I don't even know what to say right now, but I am so glad you told me. The truth is, rarely can a response make something better, but what makes something better is connection. It's connection. And when I'm trying to silver line it, I'm not giving connection. I'm not having connection. I'm trying to orchestrate everything. But when I say I can't even imagine the pain you're feeling, I can't even imagine. But thank you for telling me. I want to be with you as you walk through this. Suddenly there's connection. And connection is what people need to change. Now, there are some factors that tend to prevent us from being able to empathize with others. Let me give them to you quickly. Self-centeredness. If you're a very self-centered person, then the whole empathy talk is kind of a waste. You're not going to get it. Some people like to be the center of the universe. They like to stay in a position of power. By the way, that's one of the reasons empathy is so difficult, because we think that if we listen to someone honestly and honor their opinion or their view or their lens, then we think somehow we are giving up our power. And all of us have a sense of power. You know, we all want, it's going back to the slave days, they say that the average Georgian didn't own slaves, but even poor whites enjoyed the fact that there was at least a class of people that were seen under where they were. So everybody wanted to maintain where they were, maintain their power, right? But we think that sharing power is a zero-sum game. Do you know what that means? That somehow it's a pie, and here's the pie, but if I share with my new friend Sandra, if I share some power with her, if I empower her, then I somehow am disempowering me. But it doesn't work like that. I can empower her, and that empowers me. We're all empowered. You understand? That's the difference. So I don't have to be self-centered and think, well, if I empower someone, then I somehow am minimizing me. No. All of us are enriched. All of us are enlarged, because it's not a zero-sum game. Very important. Another thing that hurts us is non-active listening. And I hear this from couples a lot, where someone will say, he doesn't listen to me, or she doesn't listen to me. But it's a beautiful thing when you really set the computer aside, turn the phone off, and just lock in and just listen. And not try to talk over someone, not try to change their story, but just listen to them. It took me a long time to not interrupt, but or try to fix. Some of us, we want to listen to the story, but then we're always saying, oh, I know what you can do. I know what you can do. I know what you can do. Nobody wants us to do that. They just want to know that they're heard, that they're heard. I want to show to this person that I've got 100% focus, that I'm not going to talk over them. I'm not going to interrupt them. I'm going to listen to the whole message. Very, very important. But the final thing is this, being too results-oriented. Some people are so results-oriented that they just absolutely cannot see people, because they're only seeing tasks that need to be accomplished. Have you ever worked for somebody like that? They don't see people, they just see the job that's got to get done. And can I tell you something? That is something that would have worked 20 or 30 years ago. That is not going to work in the world that we live in today. I speak about empathy in corporate settings, and leaders and organizations have traditionally viewed empathy with suspicion, thinking that there is no place for soft emotional skills in the tough world of business. My experience is that managers worry that employees will take advantage of them if they show empathy, but changing times and changing needs mean that we have to change how we're doing things, and now it is the cutting edge companies understand that leaders are more coaching leaders, and as coaching leaders, they use emotional intelligence more. They are trying to help develop the person to their fullest potential. They are not sitting behind a desk and just giving out orders and saying, you will get it in or you're replaceable. those companies less and less and less. Nobody wants to work there. They want to work where someone cares about them. And with the millennials flooding the workplace, more and more they are saying that leaders, true leaders, have to understand that these young people need to be trained, they need to be taught, but they also need to be loved. Some of them didn't come out of the best experiences. Some of them haven't learned how to adult yet. And just to say you're going to do it or you're going to be gone is to shirk a responsibility that is ours to help raise up our young people. True spirituality puts people in the rightful place as the most important things we experience in this life. True spirituality. And I want you to understand that. Research reported in Scientific America suggests that our level of empathy, the ability to understand the feelings of others, is lower today than it was 30 years ago. I think it's because of social media to a degree. We don't like what somebody's saying, we just turn it off. Or unfollow them, or block them. Or because it's on the internet, we can say, well, I think you're an idiot. Where we wouldn't have said that to someone face to face 30 years ago, we wouldn't have said that. We were in a relationship with them, but now we've got millions of people we can be in a relationship with, so it's just easy to throw them away. But followers of Jesus have to hear his words ringing in their ears. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Be aware of people around you and love them. Love them. Love them. Daniel Goleman, who is the guy that's the father of emotional intelligence, he tells a story about Princeton Divinity School. And they were doing an experiment. None of the students knew, but they had a class full of preachers, and they gave the class an assignment. Nobody knew what the other assignments were, but they all had to preach a sermon. And so half the class were given random topics: preach about the love of God, preach about sin, preach about Jeremiah, preach about whatever. The other half were all given the same topic. They didn't know which was the Good Samaritan. You know the story of the Good Samaritan? The guy's fallen in the ditch, he's been beaten up, he's laying in the gutter, and how the priest and the rabbi, everybody passes him by, and it's only a Samaritan that sees him and takes care of him. Y'all know the story. And then they scheduled these preachers at different times at another auditorium across campus, and unbeknownst to the preachers, they had a man all wrecked with makeup where he looked horrible, and he was bent over, and he was in a distressed position, and he was groaning, and these ministerial students have to make it to their class to present their sermon. And their theory was, would the people who had been assigned the topic of the Good Samaritan, would they have been the ones that were most apt to stop? And what they discovered was that had nothing to do with it. That what had everything to do with it was if they were running ahead of time or if they were running behind time. If they were running behind time, they didn't even see the guy. They didn't even see the person. They just were going to class to preach the sermon on being a good Samaritan. If they were running ahead of time a little bit, they stopped. So, oh my gosh, what's wrong? What can I do? What can I help? It helped them understand that, and most social scientists are thinking this today, we are pre-wired to help. There's something good in us. We want to help. We want to be compassionate. We want to be empathetic. We want to be. But sometimes in the orchestrating of our life, we fill it so full that we don't really do the things that we really know we'd like to do. But I say again, and I hope you hear it all week, Jesus said, do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Would you bow your heads, please? Thank you, Father, so much for this day. Thank you for allowing us to spend time studying. Thank you for this huge topic of empathy. It's important. It's one of the most important things you teach us, that we need to care. We really need to care about others. And some of us need to get off our high horse and we need to listen with no judgment. Just listen and love people. Be able to walk with them in whatever they're going through, so that we can really show that we care more than anything about being brothers and sisters together. I pray your blessings on every person here, and I pray you'll apply this talk to our hearts all week long. And I thank you for this. In Jesus' name, amen.